Alright, we have reached the semifinals in Bucharest. They will actually begin in a few hours. And things have gotten a bit interesting in this tournament because all of the four players that are remaining in the draw, none of them have ever won an ATP Tour title in their careers. So on Sunday, one of these four players will win his first ATP Tour title. So we have three seeded players remaining in the draw, which are the third seed Fabian Marchand, the seventh seed Mariano Navone, and the eighth seed Botic van de Zenschulp. The other player who is not seeded is the young guy from Spain, Daniel Merida Aguilar, who I believe is in the first semifinal of his career at ATP Tour level. So we have a very similar situation to what is going on in Marrakesh at the same time, where the teenager also from Spain, Rafael Hodar, is also making his first ATP Tour semifinal. And another interesting thing is that across all three tournaments that are going on this week, which are Houston, Bucharest, and Marrakesh, they are all now at the semifinal stage. So across all three of those tournaments, there are 12 players left in those three tournament draws combined. Out of all 12 of those players, only 3 of them have won ATP titles in their careers. So I just said at Bucharest, none of the remaining players have ever won an ATP Tour title. In Marrakesh, only Luciano Darderi, the top seed, has won an ATP Tour title. The other 3 players left in that tournament have never won an ATP Tour title. And in Houston, both Paul and Tiafoe have won ATP Tour titles. But the people in the other semifinal of that tournament, Tirante and Buruchaga, have never won an ATP Tour title. So only 3 out of the 12 players that are left in the draws across all 3 of the tournaments that are being played this week have won ATP Tour titles, which are Paul, Tiafoe, and Darderi. So we're now getting back to Bucharest, where none of the remaining players in the draw have ever won an ATP Tour title. That makes it very difficult to predict these semifinals. We really have 2 semifinal matches where you really believe that anything could happen in these matches and none of it would be surprising at all. So it was very difficult to use past results to analyze any of these matches for predictions because none of these players have been getting to many semifinals in recent years, in recent times, in the past year I should say. They have not been getting to many semifinals and they have not been getting to many finals. And both of these pairs of players have never faced each other before, so we also have no head-to-head data to go off of there. So these predictions are basically just guesses, because even looking at the stats of these players' past matches, there was nothing really spectacular that you could pull out to say this guy will defeat this guy. They all are playing kind of mediocre-ish. So these predictions that I'm about to make are basically just a pure guess, and there's barely anything that anybody could use to base off of to make predictions for these 2 matches as to why any of these players should win or lose in straight sets or 3 sets. And this is a bit of a unique situation because we just have literally nothing to go off of here. So this is basically just going to be a guess. So starting off with Navone versus van de Zenschulp, they have never faced each other before, as I already said. And I'm going to go with van de Zenschulp to win this in straight sets. If I can provide some reasoning for that, which I can barely do, because like I said, there's barely anything to go off of here, is because van de Zenschulp has won all 3 of his matches in straight sets at this tournament. so he has not dropped a single set on his way to the semifinals. Navone has dropped 1 set. So there is really barely a difference there. But if you can take something away to make a prediction as to which player will win here, it will be something like that, where Van de Zandschulp has not lost a single set. I also think he has been in more finals in his career than Navone, but I think it's only like 3 finals versus 2. But overall, he is a bit of the more experienced player of the two. He's older. He's a few years older than Navone. I believe has also had better Grand Slam results than Navone. And overall, he's kind of just a craftier player and looks to be a bit more proactive with getting to the net and trying to construct the points. So I think that he will win this semifinal match in straight sets. But again, any result here will not surprise me at all. Which same goes for the second semifinal, which I'm getting to now, which is between the third seed Fabian Marchand and the young Spaniard Daniel Merida. So Marchand, this is of course Merida's first ATP Tour semifinal of his career, as he's quite a young player who basically just burst onto the scene. But Marchand, even though he's 25 or 26 years old, I believe he is only 26 years old. I believe he has only ever made actually one ATP Tour semifinal in his career. Which people would think that a player like Marchand, who has defeated Alcaraz on clay, would have achieved more, would have made at least more semifinals, made finals. But I actually think this is only the second semifinal of his career, if I'm remembering correctly. Because I was remembering there was a tournament last year, I believe it was in Munich or something like that, where he reached the semifinals before losing to Alexander Zverev. And I believe it was mentioned there somewhere that was actually his first ATP Tour semifinal. So to be fair, he really only started becoming notable in 2023 when he beat Alcaraz at Rome. But people would kind of think that he would actually have made at least one semifinal before last year, and probably a final or even won a title. But he has not really made many semifinals in his career. So, but nevertheless, he is here, and I think he will go one better here, and also reach his first final of his career. And I really have no reasoning for this at all. I guess the only thing I could say is that he is a more experienced player. He has definitely been on the main tour longer than Merida has. Merida, he did defeat the second seed Mannarino in the round of 16. But Mannarino on clay, I don't really know if he's much of a threat there. But I can say maybe Merida will be a bit more tired, because he did have a very difficult 3-set match in his first match of the main draw, 7-5 in the third. Then he also took 3 sets to defeat Mannarino, 6-2 in the third. And then in his last match in the quarterfinal against Tito and Jorge, he lost the first set 6-4, and then he had to come back in the second set to win a tiebreak 9-7. And he was up 3-1 in the final set before Jorge had to retire. So he has had 2 consecutive 3-set matches in a row, and then one more match that was in the third set before it got cut off. So he will maybe be a bit more tired than Marchand. And also, he also had to come through qualifying Merida. So there's 2 more matches that he had to play than Marchand. Marchand, what's that? 2 more, in addition to the one more match that he already had to play, because Marchand got a bye in his first match of this tournament, and he was already automatically in the main draw due to being the 3rd seed. So this is another similar situation actually to the Marrakesh match semifinal we have there between Dardri and Trungaliti. Trungaliti, he has had to play 5 matches to get to the semifinals, and Dardri has only had to play 1 match. So that is why I picked Darby to win in straight sets there. And this is kind of a similar situation actually. Merida has had to win 5 matches to get to this stage. Marchand has only had to win 2. And he won both of those 2 matches in straight sets. So I think he will have more left in the tank than Merida. But Merida is also a very young player, so stamina might not actually be too much of an issue for him. But nevertheless, Marchand has not lost a set, even though he has played fewer sets than Merida. Marchand has only had to play 4 sets, two straight set matches. But overall, I think he does definitely have a little more experience, having been on the main tour longer than Merida, and having been in at least one semifinal before this. I think this is only his second semifinal compared to Merida's first, but that is still a slight advantage, at least, if anything. So I think Marchand will win this, but I think we'll be in 3 sets. And of course, as I've said multiple times, no outcome here will surprise me for either of these semifinals. Unless we see something crazy like a double bagel, I don't think anything else that happens will be surprising. But my official predictions are going to be that Van de Zandschulp defeats Navona in straight sets, and Marchand defeats Merida in 3 sets, and I think we'll have a final between the 3rd seed Fabian Marchand and the 8th seed Botek Van de Zandschulp.